go again, boys and girls, and welcome to Sam Snead's House of Whiskey once again for our weekly live whiskey show.
It's something every week. It's like...
I may or may not have had a beer before we started. But anyway, I'm Sam Snead from the House of Whiskey. This is the illustrious Mr. Nigel Kelly from the Whiskey Baron.
Sure.
And today we've actually got some pretty cool little bourbons, I guess you would say. Bourbon and actually an American single malt. We've got a little something, and we just want to do something a bit different because we always do kind of mainstream stuff. These are definite, very, very much your craft style distilleries. This is so craft style, it's not even in its proper bottle. The normal proper bottle would look a little bit more like this, I would say. The Peach Street Distillery. And this is the little smoked rye. But Nigel's girlfriend from over in Colorado has sent us a sample in a sample bottle, so to speak. So apologies to the guys at Peach Street for not having your proper bottle. But this is how it was sent to us.
The folks at home can go and just type it in there. It's another distillery out of Colorado. So when Tara said, hey, there's a smoked rye I want to try, so it's like, cool. So we split a bottle, got sent some of this, and we're going to try the Corsair, which I have not tried.
Well, that's kind of the theme, because this is actually triple smoke, as in it's been smoked with three different styles of, they've dried the malted barley over three different styles of smoke. Your peach smoke, your beech wood, and cherry wood. Oh. So that's the three different styles. And what they'll do is, like, imagine, you know, this room's a kiln, and they'll have the peach, the beech wood, or the malted barley, the peach smoke, whatever the case may be. They'll have it drying in the kiln. And when they dry all the three separate malted barleys, they'll bring them together, and it goes to the grist mill at that point. And then it'll go into the mash tun. So it all actually stays together after they've been married together.
Interesting.
And so it's pretty, I've actually tried this whiskey. Nigel has not. It's interesting to see what his opinion is going to be, because I've already formed my own, which I'm curious to see if it stays that way after I've tried it.
Okay, so question, another thing that I don't know. So this is made in Tennessee.
Yes.
So does it come under the same rules as...
Glad you brought that up, because as it stands now, people mistakenly think that America has rules like the rest of the world when it comes to single malt drinking. There are not. There is no set law like single malts in Scotland, 40%, 3 years minimum in a barrel, things like this. There is nothing like that in the States. So what we're drinking, it can still say American whiskey, and it can be 2 years old.
Okay, but
unlike bourbon, which does have specific definitions. Go.
Okay, so no, where I was going was, because it's in Tennessee, does it have to go through the Lincoln County process? I mean, how far does the whiskey category go?
Well, that's the thing, since it's not bourbon, it does not have to go through the Lincoln County process. It's specifically designed for bourbon. And it's also, if you read their offices, it does say Tennessee and Kentucky.
Oh, really?
Which is which?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so we're probably going to have to start with that one, because that's 40%, and then the Peach Street
yeah, we got
46.
a bit more here. And wouldn't you know it? Yeah, it says produced and hand bottled, Nashville, Tennessee, Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Well, if it says it's produced, then it must be
made there, maybe shipped up. You know, it's kind of interesting. And a couple. We'll talk more about that one in a bit. So, you reckon we should start here?
Well, I mean, I haven't tried it, so I only have the rye to go with, and it's just the
40%
going on ABV.
So they do single batches, you know, which actually Peach Street does as well, and they'll handwrite the labels. If our producer can just, you can come up and you can kind of see. So it'll give you the batch number, and it'll actually give you the specific bottle number. And they handwrite these labels, which, you know, Nigel and I have always kind of barked on anytime you do the single barrels like that. It's a really cool personal touch, because you'll see you're getting bottle number 643 of only 1,433. So it's quite specific and quite cool. So we'll just give it a crack. And like I said, go ahead.
So there seems to be a literal plethora of American craft distillers coming out.
Popping up all over the show.
In Colorado, apparently there's 72. So
just in Colorado?
Just in Colorado. So you've got to imagine down
He's become Mr. Colorado now, boys and girls. I mean, you could probably tell him how many people live in the state, for God's sake.
600,000. No, actually I don't know. I'm just kidding. So you've got to imagine in other areas, and just one thing. Okay, so we're trying American whiskey, but I was just speaking to someone earlier about bourbon. You can make bourbon anywhere in the United States. Okay, so it's just one of those things we keep needing to reiterate. Bourbon is a uniquely American offering. In 1964, the US Congress recognized it as being such, and so bourbon is set down the law, can only be made within the United States. To be a Kentucky straight bourbon can only be made in Kentucky, etc., etc. So interesting that there's this new American whiskey going back to, you know, barley.
Become an American citizen with that kind of knowledge. He's going to flow out
with the barley. So, is there any word that there's going to be some regulations brought in, or some kind of
on single? There's going to have to be, because, like you say, there's so hundreds, actually probably thousands at this stage of new distilleries. And for what it's worth, you know, if you ask the question to yourself, thinking, well, okay, why are there so many new distilleries just jumping up in America as opposed to Scotland or Ireland and Japan and anywhere else? And it's actually quite simple. You know, Nigel and I have talked before about how fast the maturation happens in the States. You know, they've got these massive temperature fluctuations. Tennessee and Kentucky are great examples. It gets exceptionally hot, you know, well over 40 degrees in the summer months, you know, June, July, August. In the winter months, quite common to be completely blanketed with snow. With these massive temperature fluctuations, you get this massive barrel movement. So the spirit's going in and out of the wood.
It's called barometric pressure, despite what Luke from Epic says. It's called barometric pressure. It's the change.
It's all about barometric pressure, but it actually is true. And so you can, the aging process in the States is much more accelerated than like in Scotland, where it'll take 8, 9, 10 years before you've got a good spirit. In the States, they've got the luxury of being able to put out really, really good stuff 2, 3, 4 years.
As I said, I was just recently up in Colorado and visited the Laws Distillery, and thank you very much to Alan Moore.
And in the middle of the winter, I might add.
In the middle of the winter, and Peyton and the boys in the distillery put up with 1,000 questions from the Kiwi. But they have one place in their warehouse where it's almost 1 breath a day. Such as the change in the fluctuation and the temperature changes in there, that barrel is doing that every day. So that's the whiskey being expanded into the wood and being pushed out. Now that is
That's
actually
your definition of 1 breath a day.
for the barrel, because that's a cycle. So what I'm saying is, in Scotland, sometimes that cycle can take a whole year for it to expand enough out into the wood and to come back down. So you have to be careful not to confuse, and we were talking about a country very close to ours recently with our friend Bill Lumsden, where I believe they are confusing colour with quality. And just because it's picked up stuff out of the wood, you've extracted a lot of colour, because that's what happens when it breathes faster, you extract more out of the wood. But what you're missing out is that esterification and the oxidisation.
Can
That's
we
a
get our
word,
producer
check it
to
out.
double check that? On Scrabble, I think I have to call you on that. What on the nose though? So
It's really intriguing. So you said, I don't know what beechwood is.
it's like it's a sweet, almost like actually beechwood would be a little bit more sweet than the maplewood they'll use at Jack Daniel's. Similar kind of.
Because I know you technically can't smell sweet, but that smells like it's going to be sweet.
Do you get a bit of like smoky cinnamon in there, or just me?
There's something in there. So I know the peat, that's kind of, I'm clicking that away, so I'm not sure about the cherry wood and the beechwood.
I get a little bit of cherry wood. You leave your nose in there for a couple of seconds. There's definitely some of that. Nice.
I've got no basis on what cherry wood should smell like. I don't know.
You know what cherries smell like?
Okay,
I'm not
is
being
it
facetious.
same?
Same, yeah.
Okay. So when you say cherry wood, I'm thinking of the tree.
But it's not, you know, I'm triple smoke. And I'm thinking, bam, triple smoke. I'm going to get smacked with smoke, smoke, smoke. I'm not getting the heavy smoke. I wonder what the PPMs, if there's, you know, if we could ask the guys at Corsair, like the PPMs, parts per million, is how you'll measure, or how in Scotland, how they'll measure the smoke. Phenols, or PPMs, parts per million of these phenols. And it can tell you, like for example, an Ardbeg 10-year-old, 55 ppms, give or take. This, now so you've tried it.
Yeah.
So nose to palate, is it what you would expect? Or?
I think that the nose doesn't actually, the nose potentially, you smell it, you might think it's a little bit
fruity.
Yeah, fruity, and it's going to be this kind of, but that's actually, I hope you're going to agree with me, but I really like that. I mean, I'm genuinely sort of thinking,
that's why I wanted you to try this, because I read all the reviews, and maybe that was my problem. I read the reviews, and I was expecting, and the lad, to be fair, a good customer of ours, brought this in from the States as a gift, and he just said it was great, and the reviews, everything, great. So when I went to try it, I was just like...
It's the greatest disappointment is the expectation.
I know, and I just... It didn't.
It's a little bit. It seems to be all at the front, and then it kind of disappears in the back. But not necessarily a bad thing. I think that's something you could drink an awful lot of. So, what is it that's not appealing to you on here?
It's actually, interestingly enough, it's changed quite a bit since I first opened. That's probably a mistake I made. Was right when I first opened, I jumped into it. And sometimes, as Nigel and I have talked about, that whiskey definitely changes a lot. And I think this whiskey, the advantage of being open and some oxygen has been introduced now. and it's gotten a lot better. Because I opened, I think, like a couple of weeks ago, so it has gotten a lot better. But it is interesting to see, So right away, you like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I say, on the nose, there was this kind of inviting fruitiness to it. Potentially, it smelled like it could have been a bit sweet. Not that technically you can smell sweet. It reminds you of things.
Yeah, but you kind of. Yeah, I know what they say, but yeah.
So, but then when I tasted it, there's lots of those different smoky aspects going on. And again, I'm not really familiar with anything that's been cherrywood or beechwood. But I think that's a whiskey you could introduce people to show them a different style. Now, were you expecting something? Were you expecting?
I think so. After I read, and just psychologically, you get in your mind, all right, this is what it's going to taste like. This is what it's going to feel like. And I've got this vision of, the whole romanticism of the 3 different kilns, the malted barleys are, being dried 3 different ways, married again. I've got this whole thing going through my mind, and then when I opened it and tried it, I'm like, it was a little acidic is the best I can come up with, but it's not there now. It seems to have.
Okay, so were you basing that against what you expect from a Scottish single malt?
No. I see what you're saying, but no. Because American single malts are definitely very, very different than Scotch. There is no doubt. And there's enough American single malts out there now. Oh, there. Ooh, wow, that was a Canadian jumping out. Sorry. But we've got enough now. We've got well over 100 single malts now in the States.
Okay.
And again, they don't give you any kind of distillation date or anything. It could be 2 years. It's got to be at least 2 years. But 3, 4, 5 years, I don't know. There's no indication of distillation date and bottling date.
See, I think you could be forgiven for thinking that was something from the Highlands that on the nose. There's
You
kind
think?
of like
From the Highlands?
But probably more space. There's that kind of grassy note, that kind of freshly
Earthy?
blown hay. Trying to think of something that would be similar to on the nose.
Now we put a touch of water in there now, which 40% normally we don't
If
really
you
do,
water this
but just 3 drops. Yeah, just wanted to see if it opened it up a bit more, give us a bit more.
I think it's really exciting in the world of whiskey. I mean, we've been lucky enough to try some really good whiskies from Catalan. We've tried some stuff from the guys at Amrut. David from World of Whiskies over at Chicken at the distillery out in Israel. We got to try that one in Sweden. Was it Sweden? McMyra?
McMyra, yeah.
And so
Which was
there's all
quite
these
nice.
people all around the world making amazing whiskey. So I think the biggest thing is going into them and trying it and doing a do I like it or don't I, as opposed to, oh, this is supposed to be like this, or I'm expecting that. And that's where you're going to get the biggest disappointments.
Interestingly enough, how do you like that with water?
Well,
I mean, seriously. And normally at 40%, I personally would never say put a douse of water in there, but I almost want to say it helped it a little bit.
well, it's changed it. I was talking to someone earlier today about adding water to it, and I used to be this gung ho guy. Didn't drink my whiskies with water because it was all like rah, rah, until I visited Glen Grant. And you go to Glen Grant, and
I thought you were going to say till you met me. I sorted you out pretty
so much.
good.
And you go to Glen Grant, and Major Grant developed this in the late 1800s. There's this garden that's about 1 kilometre long. You get the key from the distillery office. You walk through this amazing garden, walk across this
It
bridge,
is beautiful.
up into this little stone building built into the side of the wall. There's a waterfall rushing down the side
There's
there.
a gate there, the old iron
Yeah, a
gate.
little gate. You get the key, open the safe in there. There's some glasses, bottle of whiskey of the Glen Grant, and a shell casing on the chain. You hold the chain, put it down into the bottom of the waterfall, pick up some water and put a few drops in there. And that kind of was one of those things. It was part theatre, part art, but it opened my mind and my eyes to what can happen when you add some water to whiskey. So we talk on and bang on a lot, as we do on the show anyway, but try it neat.
Like you're doing right now?
Like I do right now.
Like he's doing right now.
Actually, you know what? I had it
Not
on.
another story. A story within a story. Jesus Christ.
For last week's show, I put it on in the morning just to listen to what we sound like. Geez, we talk a lot of crap.
No, there's no we to that, big fella. There's no we. I am strictly factual. I talk about specific things. You just go out. I mean, what producer? What do you talk about for the last 10 minutes?
It was a great
Anyway,
story.
look, I have to say that's gotten light years better. Maybe I just tried on a sour note. And look, whiskey's like anything else. If you're in a bad mood, which lots of stress recently and just all different kinds of things going on, and maybe I just tried it at the wrong moment. Yeah.
I'd say that.
But that's good.
That's an interesting style of whiskey.
Yes, that's actually a good way to put it.
If you go into this going, this is a peated whiskey, and in my mind, I'm going to compare that to Ardbeg, I'm going to compare that to Talisker O'Rourke.
You can't.
You're going to be very disappointed.
That's yeah. I have to say it's interesting because when I told you this morning, I said I'm curious to see. Now I've tried it. I want to see your real opinion. But now trying this again is definitely a lot different actually.
Well, it would be interesting again to try this. So I was lucky enough again when I was up in Colorado to try this at Shop 33 in Denver. Who've got an amazing little selection of everything up there: beer, whiskey, wine, the whole bit. And this smoked rye from the Peach Street Distillery, who are also in Colorado.
Now, are they in Denver or just outside?
Actually, I'm not 100% sure. It's in Colorado. Colorado
oh, no,
is...
they're in Palisade.
Yeah, it's in the Palisades.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, like the desert of Colorado.
So
But
one of the guys lives in the Palisades, and
they're still over 1,000 meters up. The distillery, they're quite up there, over 1,000 meters, 400 some odd feet.
So this is very, very brand new. So I got back from Colorado 2 weeks ago. They haven't even updated the notes on their Facebook or on their website. They're saying this is coming out. So I think Shop 33 must have been some of the first people to get it.
Shit. Sorry guys, I got to go back and just a little bit of about the lads that we ran on. See what happens when Nigel Kelly starts rambling on about stuff.
People listen and they forget what they were thinking.
A couple of lads. I mean, imagine if Nigel and I were brewing beer in our garage and we started, deciding this is kind of cool. What else can we do? And let's start making whiskey. That's what happened with these guys that started the Corsair Distillery. The guys had been friends for many, many, many years. They're not brothers; they're just good mates, and they'd been friends for many, many years, brewing beer in the garage like everyone else in America. And they started thinking, all right, what else can we do to make this a little bit more cool? And so they started actually distilling spirit, and that's how Corsair came about. So Corsair, the distillery itself, has probably been around, I don't know, 7, 8 years. Could be wrong. The guys will have to drop me a line and let me know. But just a little bit of information on how they kind of started and came about. And didn't mean to interrupt Nigel there, but just wanted to get that out there because Nigel started rambling as he does.
So sorry, I just thought it'd be worth showing a picture of, because the bottle actually looks pretty cool.
Oh yeah, the bottle shot.
I don't know how that's going to show up doing the filming on the, because we have a professional cameraman, so he's made that adjustment.
Our producer, Big Tim, I mean, there's his famous thumb again.
Yeah.
Tim's famous for the thumb already. But yeah, so when Nigel and I first tried this a couple of weeks ago, I was seriously pleasantly surprised. Really, really pleasantly surprised.
You know what? It's going to be interesting to see what it's like on the nose, because the difference between these two is phenomenal.
Yeah,
It's so ridiculously far apart.
Jesus, yes. Very, 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 very different. Now we're talking
46%.
So smoked rye, and as far as we know, smoked, is it with peat smoke?
Don't know. Couldn't find any information. So guys, if you're watching at Peach Street Distillery, just some updated notes. I tried to find some reviews and there was nothing because this is brand new.
What are you smoking it with? What kind of chip? Is it actually peat that
Well,
they're using?
when you say what are you smoking it with, you know what's legal now up in Colorado.
Well, this is true.
That could be a whole
little cannabis smoking. No, I'm not getting that on the nose, just quietly. But it is very, very, very different, hey?
So we're talking about two different smoked things, and these could not be further apart.
Well, this is and this is more along the lines of a single malt, as in the base is malted barley. This is rye, and from what I understand, they say 100% rye, which leads me to believe that they've injected some enzymes in there.
Probably use the enzymes.
Instead of using malted barley to get that enzyme.
Because both corn and rye, I know we spank on about this a lot, but both corn and rye are very inefficient at getting the fermentation going. So
very sweet on the nose.
On the nose,
quite
it is
sweet.
again. But it's a completely different sort of thing. So up at Lawless, they are malting half of their barley and unmalted, leaving the other half unmalted, so you get a different sort of thing. I'm imagining this is all unmalted.
You reckon all unmalted?
Unmalted rye. I never heard of rye.
I had never heard of malted rye before, so I would say it could be.
Which is why rye has to be cooked at that higher temperature, because it's a really hard grain to break down.
It's a much harder shell.
But the smoke seems to be a lot more obvious on this.
You think?
So I can smell it. I mean, I know they've had water in it now, but yours is evaporated. What
Darth got a hold of it. Oh, Jesus, Jones. Speaking of Darth, what should Darth have? Well, I reckon we'll start him here because Darth might have to double dip on that. Yeah, I don't know. I think the smoke levels on the nose are maybe about the same. You don't get big smoke either way.
But it's different, and it's so different.
Have you tried it? It's a little bit more youthful. This is a younger spirit, I guess.
I didn't notice it being quite as young when we first tried it. So it's getting
more earthy.
It's getting a different comparison because of what we just had. And that's something, again, be aware when you're doing these little experiments at home, that one whiskey will taste different because of what you've had around it. But it is, they're like, I mean, you saw the colour of what the
Very
bottle
clear.
was, so very light looking spirit.
Quite young, quite young. I'd say 2 years.
But again, very drinkable product.
And what's our ABV on this?
46.
It is actually. See, with rye, I love my ryes. I mean, I love. I'm a rye head, I guess, if there's such a thing. And I always like to find new, weird, wonderful ryes. And this is very.
Well, you consider if we were to take the Laws rye, this rye, and our friends at Willet's rye. I mean, those three couldn't be further apart. I mean, you get that real
same,
spiciness
but different.
Out of the Willet, you get that cinnamon brown sugar that we got from the Laws, and this is providing something completely different.
I tell you what, it leaves a bit of a numbing sensation in my palate.
I just thought it was me, and I was trying to talk over it.
It is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you rope that around your palate, it's quite, especially up top here, it's a bit numb. And 46%, yeah, there's a bit of ABV there, but
So maybe it has been smoked with the green stuff.
well, you know, that would not make them bad people. I mean, we do use the word medicinal when we refer to a lot of whiskeys from Scotland.
Yeah.
So, you know, we all know that cannabis is exceptionally medicinal. I'm going to pour, oh no, you've been slow to drink over there. Or either that or you short. You short struck me on the pour, so that's the problem. But I do want to add a bit of water to this to see what, we'll just do 3 here. So 1, 2, 3.
And there's a really good oiliness in it. People at home probably can't see that. But
It is quite oily. Much more oily than the Corsair.
oh, now that's changed it again.
Sweet, spicy.
It's kind of, if anything, it may have softened off the nose with that smoke.
Yeah. Ooh, it was a dead black hole in our conversation. That's weird with us.
Oh yeah, if dead air, we can be no time.
Yeah, usually if I'm quiet, you're chirping on. But yeah, the nose it's dampened the nose a bit. So, and we're still talking 43, 44, but it feels to me actually less than 40. It feels quite soft.
Yeah, well, funny you say dampen. You imagine if you've had an outside fire and it's been put out and you smell it the next day, and it's that kind of cold campfire.
Yep. There's the spice. That's what I was expecting. Now the spice has shown up. I'm getting a real nice spicy tone now. The olfactories are just jumping
on
up.
the palate, that spice is really starting to come
Yeah.
to the fore. Yeah. So I think this
Into
is
the sweetness, into the vanilla. See, I was expecting a little bit more vanilla.
Yeah, I think there's more vanilla, there's more sweetness. I think this is going to be one of those whiskies that you're going to end up potentially not drinking neat so much, as I want to put that in a cocktail. I want to have that in a Manhattan, smoked rye Manhattan. I think that would go down just outstanding.
You could use it as the secondary ingredient to kind of give it some life, almost.
You were going to say in a julep, or
Yeah, actually, I was thinking julep. That's a hell of a
we'll
julep.
have to try it. We're going to have to do a julep day. You know, we're going to actually have to cook up some juleps.
You've talked about it. You've threatened to do that. That's really nice. I could drink the heck out of that. That's
so two very
different
whiskies. We've got the triple smoked from the guys
Corsair.
at Corsair down in Nashville. And then we got, and apologies to the team at Peach Street Distillers. This is the other half of the bottle. But Peach Street Distillers smoked rye, 40%, 46%. Both of them are smoked. One uses cherry, beechwood, and what do you say? And peat. And then we're actually unsure of what this has been smoked with, but whatever it is, damn, it's working.
It's not peat. They're not using peat here. Maybe beech, not. I don't think cherry wood. Maybe even sugar maple. I don't know.
Well, again, when I was in Colorado, I went to a place called Salida, and I went to a little distillery called Deerhammer. They were actually smoking some of their grains out the back. They had what looked like a filing
That's such a good smell too.
Oh,
Such a good
amazing.
smell. You have no idea if you've never experienced that. Just such a good. Walking into a bakery smells great. Walking in when they're smoking malted barley, there's nothing better. There's nothing.
I sound like I'm a walking advert for Colorado at the moment, where there's so many craft brewers, so
That's
many
'cause
craft distillers.
You're in love with that state, like the whole state kind of thing. Let's be honest.
But anyway, so
Look at the poor bastard. He's turned red now.
That's because of the whiskey. So, did you get any indication of what the triple smoke was kind of worth in US dollars, or?
Actually, it's not cheap, to be fair. I want to say it's 58, 60 US, and for US, that's a little pricey.
Yeah, no. The smoked rye was more, and the bottle shop 33. I want to say it was like $80 US.
Yeah. So they're not cheap by U.S. standards. You know, we're so used to pricing things up in Australia and New Zealand. It's painfully expensive over here. But by U.S. standards, you can buy some phenomenal stuff around $30 pretty much across the board. But keep in mind, these are boutique, true artisanal distilleries that as we say, batch to batch to batch, handwritten labels. I mean, it's as good as you can get, as we say. Well, and to be fair, they're very different. But I could easily drink either one of those guys.
Okay, which is great, because ultimately what it comes down to is Sam and I have always had in the shop policy that we would never sell anything that we wouldn't buy or drink ourselves, and I'd happily buy and drink both of those.
Yeah, I mean, and for making cocktails, there's a lot of life in there to make a cocktail with. I'd like to see this at 46.
How many times do we say it? Because
you know, it's an American spirit. American spirits tend to hold their alcohol a bit better, as I say. And I would love to see this at 46%. And you guys in the States, you get the luxury of being able to mature things really fast. Jump this up to 46%. And geez, imagine that at 46%.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
And you can call it the Kiwis say, and that will be your new thing.
Wait a minute. The American Kiwi.
Hang on, you keep telling me you're getting
I'm
New
the
Zealand
American
passport.
Kiwi. Getting there. Had some snags along the way. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Darth Vader wants to drink. We're gonna maybe drink some more, but yeah. So just something a little bit different for all you guys out there in Whiskey Land. Give us comments. Give us whiskeys that you want to see. And by the way, someone's written in last week about the whiskey show. Yeah, the New Zealand Whiskey Show dates, everything. We're all good. Call for tickets or however you want to do it.
What are the dates?
New Zealand Whiskey Show, the second weekend of May 12, 13, and 14, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Friday is the big dinner gala. Saturday's the 2 shows. Sunday's the master classes. And we'll talk about it more and more as we go. But yeah, the New Zealand Whiskey Show up at the Langham. Call them, call me, however you want to do it.
A gala, that's the same as a gala?
Same thing.
Anyway, we'll check it up on the Facebook
Constantly
page.
trying to teach Kiwis English.
Keep the comments coming in, and until next time, slaunch it.
I got nothing left.
Oh.
Got nothing left.